There is a deeply corrosive idea circulating in our culture, an idea so subtle, so deceptively compassionate, that most people never question its hand. That is the proposition that money is primarily a matter of external oppression, luck, or circumstance, and therefore your financial condition has little to do with your character, your discipline, or your willingness to shoulder responsibility. And that is a dangerous lie, because the moment you accept that narrative, you relinquish the very agency required to transform your life. Now, this doesn't mean there aren't inequalities or that chance doesn't play a role. Of course it does, but when you overemphasize those factors, you anesthetize yourself against the truth that wealth in stable and functional societies like the United States, Canada, or Australia is disproportionately attracted to competence, reliability, delayed gratification, and trustworthiness. Money is not merely currency, it is stored responsibility. It is a measure imperfect, yes, but still a measure of the degree to which other people can rely on you to solve problems that matter. And if you are perpetually broke, chronically unstable, always behind, you must be willing to ask a question that is both terrifying and liberating. What aspect of my character is insufficient for the burden I claim I want? Because wanting financial success without cultivating the discipline required to sustain it is akin to demanding the rewards of adulthood while refusing its obligations. The marketplace, particularly in high-performance economies, does not fundamentally reward wishful thinking or resentment. It rewards value creation. And value creation is not a mystical gift bestowed upon a lucky few. It is the byproduct of structured effort over time, of telling the truth, of mastering something difficult, of becoming so competent that your presence reduces chaos rather than amplifies it. The lie that keeps people poor is the belief that money is primarily about external systems. The truth, far more unsettling, is that wealth is a psychological consequence before it is a financial outcome. And if you do not confront the disorder in your habits, your time management, your spending, your resentments, and your avoidance, no external reform will rescue you from the gravity of your own undisciplined patterns. And you see, the reason that lie is so attractive is because it absolves you of responsibility, and human beings have an almost infinite capacity to generate narratives that protect them from the unbearable weight of self-examination. It is far easier to blame corporations, governments, the wealthy, your parents, or the economy than it is to sit alone in your room and ask yourself whether you have been truly aiming at something worthwhile, whether you have been telling the truth about your own laziness, whether you have squandered hours, days, years in trivial pursuits that provide immediate dopamine at the cost of long-term stability. In societies structured around voluntary exchange, money flows toward those who can be trusted to carry responsibility across time. And trust is built on a pattern of disciplined behavior, repeated consistently enough that other people are willing to stake their resources on your competence. That means showing up when you say you will show up. It means doing the job thoroughly when no one is watching. It means mastering skills that are difficult enough that they differentiate you from the crowd. And here is the uncomfortable reality. Most people drift. They drift into careers they did not consciously choose. They drift into spending habits they never examined. They drift into debt because they lack the capacity to delay gratification. And then they drift into resentment when the world does not reward their mediocrity. But drifting is a luxury you cannot afford if you intend to build wealth, because wealth is the accumulated residue of intentional living. It is the byproduct of thousands of decisions aligned in a coherent direction. If your aim is blurry, your finances will be chaotic. If your habits are impulsive, your bank account will reflect that impulsivity with brutal honesty. The market is not sentimental, it is diagnostic. It reveals your patterns back to you. And that is precisely why the lie is dangerous. It convinces you that the diagnosis is unjust rather than instructive. Now, that does not mean the marketplace is morally perfect or that every wealthy person is virtuous and every struggling person is deficient. Such naivete would be just as dangerous as the lie we are dissecting. What it does mean, however, is that in a relatively free society, the probability of financial stability increases dramatically when an individual commits to becoming useful in a deep and structured way. And usefulness is not an accidental trait. it is forged. It is forged in the voluntary confrontation with difficulty, in the decision to specialize rather than scatter your attention across endless distractions, in the humility required to admit that you are not yet competent enough to command the income you desire. This is where many people collapse psychologically. They say they want success, but they are unwilling to endure the long apprenticeship of incompetence that precedes mastery. They want the rewards of expertise without tolerating the humiliation of being a beginner. Yet every domain that generates high-income medicine, engineering, finance, entrepreneurship, advanced trades, high-level sales demands years of disciplined effort before it yields substantial returns. And that delay is not a flaw in the system. It is a filter. It separates those who are oriented toward long-term responsibility from those who are addicted to short-term validation. The capacity to delay gratification is not merely a moral virtue. It is an economic superpower. If you can forego immediate pleasure in favor of structured investment of time, money, and energy, you begin to harness the compounding effect that governs both psychology and finance. Your skills compound, your reputation compounds, your savings compound, your network compounds. And over a decade, that compounding produces a gap so vast between the disciplined and the impulsive that it appears, from the outside, as if luck alone could explain it. But it was never luck. It was orientation. It was the quiet, daily decision to act in alignment with a future self who is stronger, more capable, and more reliable than the present one. And this is where the psychological dimension becomes paramount, because wealth is not simply a technical game of spreadsheets and interest rates. It is a moral and existential game played against the chaos of your own impulses. You are not merely competing against other people in the marketplace. You are contending with your own tendency toward disorder, toward comfort, toward self-deception. The ancient problem of chaos and order manifests itself in your bank account with ruthless clarity. Order is the budget you construct and adhere to. Order is the skill you practice daily, even when you are tired. Order is the honest assessment of your value in the marketplace and the strategic plan to increase it. Chaos is the credit card you swipe impulsively. Chaos is the job you tolerate while secretly resenting the effort required to improve your position. Chaos is the late-night distraction that steals tomorrow's productivity. And if you do not voluntarily impose order on your financial life, chaos will do it for you through debt, through anxiety, through dependency. Responsibility, then, is not a burden imposed by society. It is the mechanism by which you transform chaos into structure. When you accept responsibility for your financial future, you cease to see money as an external tyrant and begin to see it as a feedback system. If you are underpaid, the question becomes, what skills have I not yet mastered? If you are unstable, the question becomes, where is my structure insufficient? This orientation is not self-blame in the pathological sense. It is self-authorship. It is the decision to treat yourself as someone capable of adaptation. And that shift from victim to agent is the psychological hinge upon which financial transformation turns. Without it, you will always wait for rescue. With it, you begin to build. And once you truly accept that you are the primary architect of your financial destiny, something remarkable happens. The world that once appeared hostile begins to reveal itself as a field of opportunity structured by principles you can learn, respect, and even master. You start to recognize that income is deeply correlated with the magnitude of problems you are willing and able to solve, and that the size of those problems is directly proportional to the responsibility you can carry without collapsing into resentment or incompetence. The individual who earns modestly often solves modest problems. The individual who earns extraordinarily well has typically positioned himself or herself at the intersection of complexity, risk, and accountability. But that positioning is not accidental. It is chosen, cultivated, and sustained. It requires that you become someone who can tolerate pressure, who can think clearly when others panic, who can communicate with precision, who can delay personal gratification in service of a larger aim. And here is the paradox. The pursuit of wealth properly understood, is not about greed. It is about expansion of capacity. It is about becoming so reliable, so disciplined, so structured in your habits, and so aligned in your values that other people willingly entrust you with resources. That trust is capital before capital is ever dollars. If you betray that trust through laziness, dishonesty, inconsistency, no strategy, no investment trick, no economic policy will save you in the long run. But if you cultivate it deliberately, if you treat your word as binding, your time as sacred, your development as non-negotiable, you begin to transform yourself into a node of stability in a chaotic world. And stability attracts opportunity the way gravity attracts mass. The dangerous lie told you that your poverty was imposed from the outside and that your anger was justified. The truth is more demanding and infinitely more empowering. Your financial life is a reflection of your orientation toward responsibility. And if you have the courage to confront your inadequacies voluntarily, to discipline your impulses, to aim at competence rather than comfort, then over time measured not in weeks but in years, you will become the kind of person to whom wealth naturally flows, not as a miracle, not as an accident, but as the earned consequence of character, forged in truth. But you must understand that this transformation is not dramatic in the way popular culture portrays success. It is not a sudden breakthrough, not a lottery win, not a viral explosion of recognition, but rather a slow and often painfully invisible restructuring of your identity. The real shift occurs when you stop asking, "How do I make more money?" and begin asking, "Who must I become to justify greater responsibility?" That question reorganizes your priorities at the deepest level. It forces you to examine how you spend your mornings, how you structure your evenings, what you consume intellectually, who you associate with, how you negotiate, how you speak, how carefully you listen. Because wealth, in its sustainable form, is downstream from competence, and competence is downstream from disciplined attention applied consistently over time. And here is something that is rarely stated plainly. The marketplace is extraordinarily sensitive to authenticity. If you posture, if you inflate your abilities, if you promise more than you can deliver, you may gain short-term advantages, but you will inevitably collapse under the weight of your own exaggeration. Sustainable income requires alignment between what you claim and what you can actually produce. That alignment produces confidence, not the shallow bravado of self-help slogans, but the quiet certainty that emerges when you know you have paid the price of preparation. And when you possess that certainty, you negotiate differently. You take calculated risks more intelligently. You invest with patience rather than desperation. Desperation repels opportunity because it signals instability. Patience attracts opportunity because it signals strength. This is why internal order precedes external abundance. If you are frantic, impulsive, chronically comparing yourself to others, you will sabotage long-term growth for short-term emotional relief. But if you can tolerate the anxiety of gradual progressive, you can endure the slow accumulation of skill, capital, and reputation without demanding immediate validation. You begin to participate in the deeper economic principle of compounding identity. You are no longer chasing money. You are constructing a character capable of generating it. And that construction is meaningful, far beyond finance. Because in disciplining yourself economically, you are also disciplining your perceptions, your habits, and your capacity to contribute. Wealth then becomes less about consumption and more about stewardship. It becomes the ability to support a family without fear, to invest in ideas without panic, to give without resentment, to withstand downturns without psychological collapse. The dangerous lie told you that money was either evil or unattainable. The mature truth is that money is a tool that amplifies what you already are. If you are chaotic, it magnifies chaos. If you are disciplined, it magnifies discipline. And so the central task is not to worship wealth, nor to despise it, but to become the kind of person who can wield it responsibly, because in the final analysis, financial freedom is not the absence of constraint. It is the earned privilege of carrying greater responsibility without being crushed by it.